So Aaron gave me a little bit of lead that probably, this time of day on Saturday, a lot of people are going to be on the road, especially with the weather and everything. So I kept intentionally, not strictly out of laziness, but somewhat strategically, just kept this really simple. I want to become more of a resource with stuff like this because I no longer have any skin in the game, right? I'm no longer up in front as the University of whatever throws coach. There's no angle, there's no why I've really tried to make this a point at the thrower center as these kids are saying, oh, the coach from so-and-so emailed me, and trying to not push anybody a certain direction, but just help them through the process. So as I now become a high school youth coach, trying to take my experiences, good and bad, to help you kind of streamline and know what you need to do. I don't want to run through every month of every year there in high school, this is what you should be doing. I just want to give you two big resources, go through some things that I think are important on how the kids and you are interacting with the coaches, and just general thoughts. So nothing too extensive here. So the big thing, and this is what I'm learning more and more, and I really have seen this more since I've been involved with the Ironwood camp, more so than anything, is there's a place for every kid. Anybody you coach can go somewhere and throw in college. Even the kid that can barely clear the toe board with the shot. Everybody can go on and throw. There's a cost associated with that, right? If you're not as the top kid in the state who's getting recruited by Wisconsin and Minnesota and Nebraska and not having to worry about paying for school, or if it's Mankato, or if it's Grand Valley, or if it's Chadron, or wherever, it doesn't matter. The thing I always tell all the athletes is that track is, in some other sports as well, but track is the greatest thing ever because no one is ever going to fault you for what conference you played in, how big your school was, and where it was. You're throwing the same implement in the same circle or the same runway with the same measuring system that everybody else in the country is. So you can be, Judd Logan always used to say they're not going to ask what division you threw at the Olympic trials, right? So you can go and be a kid that's swinging for the fence and walking onto a team and make something of yourself anywhere. No one's, if you find a coach that you have a great relationship with, if they're getting a great education, that's all that matters. If they're going to maximize what they're capable of, it doesn't matter where they do it. But, going to the kids that are just, I want to throw in college. Well, what does that mean? Is it worth it to you to take on those loans if you're not in a big scholarship? Is it worth it to you to go to a small private school in the middle of nowhere because that was where your opportunity lied? You just have to know they have to know what it's worth for them. The costs, not just financial, but other things that they're going to have to come into play. And then what is it, they've got to be able to tell you why. Some of the kids just want to be on a big team so they can get the gear, come home at Christmas break, come by the high school, everybody check me out. That's the end goal, right? The end goal is to say I'm on the team. But why do they want to go through in college? Is it a kid that this is the only way I'm going to get college paid for? Is this the only way I'm going to be able to tell my parents I'm going to go to college? For the experience, they just want to be a student athlete. I mean, we have a young lady that came to the center for Christmas break. Her parents just recently moved to the area. She's a fifth-year senior at an NAIA school in Florida. I said, well, how long have you been throwing? She goes, well, the track coach came out and found me in August. She's 22 years old, played soccer in high school. But she's throwing it, and we got her, and we're like, holy cow, you're pretty good at this. But you never know when these opportunities, you never know when they're going to arise. But she wanted that experience. She thought it'd be fun. Hey, I'm a fifth-year senior. I want to be on the team. I want to give it a shot. I want to have some fun. So, did they want to go have the experience of being, fully rounded in college? And I had a young man at Penn State. He was an All-American, great guy. He got an offer to go to the Olympic Training Center. He turned it down, and he went to school so he could continue throwing. He was a 6'5", 190 kid right outside of Buffalo, New York. I wanted to go throw. Penn State offered me a chance to go throw. I will stay eligible. I'll do my thing. But he and I sat down and talked at the Olympic trials when he was done. And I said, what do you want to do now? The training center offered you a spot. He goes, nope. I'm going to go get a job. I'm going to buy a truck. I'm going to get a dog. And I'm going to buy a house. And he did. And he's never been happier. But I'm only going to college to throw. He wasn't disrespectful about it, but he was very clear, you know, like, hey, I'm gonna get B's and C's. I won't be a problem. I don't like going to school. I'm here because I want to throw, and this was my opportunity to take being one of the best high school throwers in the country and see what I'm capable of. And he PR'd at the Olympic trials, and he said, nope, I couldn't find a better way to end my career. I have no desire to keep doing this. I want a dog, a truck, and a house. And that's okay. You just gotta understand what the kid's intent is. So anybody can go on and do this. The biggest thing is why. Because if you're taking on a bunch of extra debt because you found a school that's gonna take you, that's great, but they've gotta understand, like, okay, but what's it worth to you? Like, why do you wanna do this? And it might be the route, like, well, maybe a junior college is where you go test the waters for a couple of years. You can save a bunch of money, see how you develop, really find out if college is for you or if you wanna move through it. So the two big resources that I would highly recommend would be the NCAA Eligibility Center, and we'll go over the website, and then TFRRS. So TFRRS is a track and field results reporting system. Every junior college, NAIA, Division II, III, I, every result is reported onto that website. It's required for NCAA ranking and national rankings with junior colleges and NAIA. So the reason I say that is, I'll show you, we'll go to the site, you can click by school, by conference, by division, and they can go see where am I gonna fit in? Where am I swinging for the fence, or where am I gonna be a big fish in a small pond? Where can, especially on the girls, it's so easy. You can say, I'm throwing the 4K and the 1K, this is what I can do. And the guys, you gotta take a little bit of a flyer if they're, mid-level kids, but as you see those conference results, you can then go to the school's websites and see, oh, he was a 50-foot shot putter in high school, or he was they'll give a little bit of background. You can snoop to see, do they even have throwers on their roster? How far do they throw in high school? Are they, something I can fit in with? And then the Eligibility Center used to be the clearinghouse, but they have a really great guide. It's called the Guide for the College-Bound Student Athlete. And it breaks down by division, what dates they're eligible to do this, what dates the coaches can talk to them, their core courses, GPA, test score, sliding scale for all of that. And it's a great resource just to kind of click through. You can see, well, sophomore year, the coaches, we can do this, and junior year, we have to make sure we're doing that. It's just a great step-by-step process. And any question a parent or a kid's gonna have is gonna come from that website. Or the guidance counselors at the high school. I think the bigger schools, you're not gonna have a problem. Would have had experience with athletes going on to collegiate athletics. If you're at a smaller school and it's limited, it might be worth, just sitting down with them after their sophomore year and just making sure you're on track. They might be a straight A student, but they might be missing a biology course that is gonna render them ineligible for Division I, II, or III, or whatever. So, the TFRRS website, and this is where all the athletes all year are stalking each other non-stop. So this is the latest results. What's on the right-hand side? I can go look through this is the national descending, this is the national lists. But meet results, conferences, performance list, teams, you can search by name. You can find a kid. Okay, I threw against that guy in high school. He threw as far as I did. Where's he at? But it's just a great resource. You can just go see where is this kid gonna fit in? And as a coach, it gives you, I can look up the Big Sky, Big South, Big East, Big 12, and I can go look. And it lists every team, it lists every meet any of those schools are going to. And I can go back and look at the calendar to find the Big Sky championships, or I can just look at their descending order list right here, view performance list. I can look, you can just sort it any way you want, but I can go down to the shot put and think, okay, to be in the top 10 right now, early in the season, I've got to throw 51 feet in the shot on the guy's side to matter to a team, right? So you can go through and look at all this. Now, I have a young man at the center right now who comes up from Boise a couple times a week, or a month. And he threw 43 feet as a freshman, and I was like, well, what are you thinking? I want to throw in college. All right, great. Well, where do you want to go? I want to go big. Okay, well, that's time for the honest conversation to say, well, you after your sophomore year, you better be throwing high 50s or close to 60 feet if those schools are going to look at you. It's doable. It's not impossible, but you just got to understand what those goals mean. Or as a coach, I may say, well, let's look at the Mountain West. Let's look at the, you know, the Big Sky. Let's look at the, you know, the RMAC or the GLIAC. You know, just looking at some other conferences where, man, don't shoot. You know, it's great that you got big goals, but let's have some. This is what it's going to take. So it opens up that conversation. But you know, it's got everything under the sun here. You can look. You know, like I can go look at old Axel here, and it's got every result from the collegiate level all the way back to their freshman year, so you can see where, you know, where they've ended up and how they've done in every event. So this is just a great resource to be able to go look and see, oh man, I could probably score in that conference my freshman year, or man, I might be overshooting my my expectations here. So it's a great resource. I highly recommend taking a look at it, and like I say, it just gives perspective on if kids have those goals, or if you're a coach or trying to explain to a kid, hey, you can do this. They might not believe. There's the opposite side where the kid's like, oh, I'm not good enough. Well, if you want to do this, there's a place for you. You can. You could go to this conference right now and you could be top 10. So it's just finding that spot for them. And this came out in 2010 when I was at Penn State, and it was just awesome. I could see what everybody in the country was doing by, you know, every week. I could sort the results, and it helps really give an idea of where they might possibly fit in. And then I don't know why I did that. I should have stayed on there next more. So you go to the Eligibility Center website. Okay, first thing, hey, want to compete at an NCAA school? An NAIA and has this as well, but this is just an example. But you know, it walks you through everything they have to do. Registering with the clearinghouse, when when to take tests. It gives you a sliding scale for your GPA and test score, your core courses. Yeah.
I'm a high school counselor. We just actually had a webinar, and I think they're getting rid of the test score requirement.
They are, and I keep that now because they're kind of in the gray area between, you know, COVID test scores went out the window because you couldn't take tests. Then all of a sudden the universities kind of sat back and went, well, our quality of our students isn't really going down. I mean, even in Arizona, for academic aid, before COVID, your test score didn't help. It was strictly GPA. So the standardized testing, was like, well, this is great, but I think, yeah, they're going away from that, but I just, you know, until they finally pull the trigger on it.
They said, like, they just had a meeting that they did.
Okay, great.
A week ago or something.
So the sliding scale goes out the window then, right? But certain schools might have a quirk that they still require a test score, especially if they're a private school or they're a high-end academic school, they still might require some kind of standardized testing. But you can go onto this site and it answers all the questions. I mean, there's the frequently asked questions, but you can just kind of scroll through it, you know, create your account, obviously, first and foremost, then they can log in. But once you're registered, you have access to all the resources. And to be able to even go on a visit or be recruited by an NCAA school, you have to be registered. You don't have to have everything submitted, but you've got to have a number on the. NAIA also has a clearinghouse. I'm not completely familiar with those. I need to get better with that, but you just have to register. That's it. You have to be listed on the site so the compliance department at that university can look and make sure at least where you're at with your progress. Okay, so that's, you know, what do they have to do to be eligible? What dates do they need to do this? What's the process? And they have a guide once you register. It's the guide for the college-bound student athlete, and it's awesome. It's just bullet points and charts, and it's very simple to realize, you know. And so these are the questions that, as a college coach, I didn't necessarily have to interpret, but I had to have this conversation sometimes with the kids. But you know, what's your end goal? What do you want out of this? If you want to go big time, why? And if they have a good reason, you just gotta have to say, well, this is what it's gonna take to get, you know, a lot of schools will have their walk-on standards and their scholarship standards. I always get nervous about that because it becomes law. You may have a full roster and not have any room for these kids, and they can't understand why they're not getting a scholarship. But you know, Is it a great school? Are you going for the coaching? Are you going for the tradition? And the biggest question I always ask them, like, what experience do you want out of this? Do you want to say you were at a school on the team and maybe throw at home meets or throw unattached? Or do you want to be at a school where you matter right off the bat? Where you're somebody that's going to score at conference, you're somebody that, you know, and to fall in with that, different programs have different philosophies. When I was at Penn State, it was win Big Tens. The AD wanted more Big Ten banners on the wall. Now, inherently, if you do well at Big Tens, you're probably going to do well at the national level. When I was at Arizona, we just looked around the room and said, well, we're never going to be able to go toe-to-toe consistently with USC and Oregon at the conference level. We always wanted to have a small...
Or Arizona State.
Well, when you were in school, yes, not anymore. But that was the thing. Like we were always trying to have a smaller, more concentrated roster, and that was dictated by the administration. So we were never going to be able to have the kind of depth to go toe-to-toe at a conference level with Oregon and USC. We just, you know, if we had a really good year, we could get top 3, and we were, you know, excited. But our goal was to consistently be a top 20 NCAA team, and then when, you know, our ultimate goal was to be a top 10 team at NCAAs. Well, there might be, you know, somewhere else where, no, you know, like Grand Canyon, for example, they want to win conference, indoor, outdoor, men, women every year. If they get a couple kids to nationals, that's great, but they want to win conference. They want to win the WAC every year. So your athlete might play better into a school that has more conference emphasis, as opposed to where I'm recruiting in Arizona. I'm not wondering if they're going to score at Pac-12s. I'm wondering if this kid needs to be at the national final at least twice in their career, if not more, depending on how much we offer in the scholarship. So if I'm offering a significant scholarship, I'm going to say, well, you need to be at Eugene or Texas, wherever the national final is going to be, at least 3 times, and you better be on the podium at least twice. It's just a perspective. You know, when I've coached Division II, I started my career at Central Washington University for 4 years. I've coached small Division I. I've, you know, been able to go on to some great opportunities. So that perspective it's completely different wherever you go. Some universities just want to have the biggest track team possible because their budget is derived by how many kids they have on the team, and the university wants to have as many kids on campus as possible to generate revenue. So you might be, oh yeah, come on in, as long as the check doesn't bounce, you're on the team, let's go. And so it's just doing that research and understanding what the emphasis of the program is and where you can fit in at. So it's asking, you know, the programs and the coaches, like, what is this somebody that's going to help your programs? Is this somebody you're going to welcome, or is this somebody you're going to tolerate until you cut them? You know, just having that understanding. I think this, in my opinion, should fall more on the athlete than the coach, but mentoring them and educating them on how to communicate, where, when. This is my firm belief. I understand it's useful, especially if you're looking at smaller schools or you're an under-recognized kid. I think recruiting services are an absolute waste of money. I'll be brutally honest. Now, this might be snobbery, this might be not having, if I got an email from a recruiting service, delete, wouldn't even open it. Now, if I'm at a small private school or I'm at an NAI, you know, I don't have the resources to go all over the country and recruit. I don't have the, you know, I don't have the ability to do that. Well, maybe that's, you know, I have a young lady at the center. I made the same comment. I said, ooh, recruiting service, that's a waste of money. She goes, well, actually, we've gotten a lot of replies. And this young lady's a 34-foot shot putter and a 105 discus thrower. Okay, well, but she's getting responses from coaches. So if that's their ability to, if they don't have the time or they don't have the thought to send a bunch of emails out, well, maybe that recruiting service works for them. I think the higher level kids, with the internet and everything, if a coach, if they're throwing far enough, they're gonna get found, regardless of what size school they're at. And if the coaches want them, they're gonna find them on social media, find your number on the high school directory or whatever, the coach's database, he can be found. But when they do reach out, small, short, concise emails. Not I've got emails that I've gotten a cramp in my finger trying to scroll down to the bottom, and nowhere in the body of that message is how far they throw or what their grades are. It's, since I was a young child, I've had a passion of throwing at the collegiate level, and my fire for throwing was you know, stoked by, you know, no. I get it. But I want to know how far you throw, what your grades are, send me some video in a way to get in touch with you. And if those marks or that video are enticing enough, I'm going to reply back. In the heading of the email, just putting name, year, high school, marks. And try not to cut and paste. I've gotten a lot of emails that were addressed to my in-state rival. I've gotten, dear Coach Blue.
Well, it makes sense because they emailed them first.
Dear Coach Blue.
That's why the copy and paste to the University of Arizona.
and also-
Original thought for that.
Funny. My favorite story, when I was at the University of Washington, there was a young lady that had emailed my head coach, who was our distance coach. Well, instead of hitting blind copy, she copied the entire conference. So as you're looking at the recipients, so maybe not the nicest thing to do, but my head coach replied, "Dear Susie, whatever your name is, thank you for your email. I'm also sure that coaches blank, 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 blank really appreciate the message. I'm sure we'll all take a really hard look at it. Maybe in the future, I would suggest that you double check who you're addressing these to, and, because she's talking about how much your university is my favorite, da 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 da. And I'm like, oof, well, that's not going to fly really far when there's 12 addressees on there. They're all the favorite university. So just taking that time to make sure it's not, dear coach, your university. Just take that time. If it's a really short message, just put the university name, dear Coach Crater, not dear coach, your university. And just keep it quick. And as much as people may eye roll or not, the days of going through the book of all the listed high school coaches in the country, I still have a copy of that somewhere, where you had to go through and find the town and the high school and find the number of the track coach. Those are gone. I tend to recruit more directly with the athlete than I do the coach, and I know that rubs a lot of the coaches the wrong way. Eventually I want to speak with the coach, but I'm trying to create a relationship with the athlete. Now, sometimes the parents are the gatekeepers, sometimes the coaches are the gatekeepers, and I'll go that route. But I tend, from a coaching standpoint, I'm going to seek them out and try to reach out to them over social media, but I'm also going to do a little bit of background. Is this out on the boat partying every day? Is this out doing crazy, stupid stuff? Or, what kind of person am I doing? And what I'm finding now a lot lately is kids are creating accounts strictly for their athletics. Might be Bobby Smith throws, and it's got class of 24, this high school, in an email, and it's just they're throwing stuff. So then they can separate the personal and doing the opposite, following Arizona State throws, or following Arizona throws, or following Minnesota throws, lets that coach know, and as much, we're sitting there too, so-and-so, who's this? And then, it just opens that door. But it also gives the opportunity to have a direct communication if you don't have cell numbers, emails, that kind of thing. But as much as I maybe disagree with it, I'm a big face-to-face communication, eye-to-eye kind of person. There might be a 17-year-old kid across the country that I'm never gonna, I've got to communicate on their level. I've got to find a way to get, and they're not answering emails. They're not answering phone calls. Well, hey, Coach Crater, I'd love to talk to you. Oh, hey, Coach, boom, 5 seconds later, yeah, this is great. But it's just, you've got to kind of, so from a coaching standpoint, that's what we're used to. But we do answer emails. We do answer phone calls. But just knowing that it is okay to reach out, it is okay to state your case, but just keeping it short and to the point. And then from there, if the coach is interested, then you can open up a little bit more detailed conversation. The coach will reach back out. So as a coach, Sarah and I talked about this last night. Be honest. This is your reputation. We all love every kid we coach. We all think they're capable of doing great things. Well, true, with exceptions. They may not be great kids, but
the honesty.
Yeah, but be fair. Especially if you've got experience, well enough, hey, or just say, I don't know. This is what they've done so far. This is what I see in practice. But just be fair, be honest. It's your credibility. And I know a lot of you local guys and coaches that have relationships with the U, have relationships with some of the Wisconsin schools, some of the Dakota schools, because you're in clinics or that coach threw in the area and grew up around here. those are great relationships. But if you're talking about an extended distance and a few states away, you know, just being credible and being honest. And I'll actually call rival coaches about some of the athletes. You know, hey, what do you think of this kid? Oh, this, or how do they interact with their coach? You know, how are they, you know, just personality stuff too, but just taking emotion out of it. Now, if you absolutely love the kid and they're the best coach, you know, they're early, they're a great leader, that's stuff I want to hear, but the speculation of how far they're going to throw, that kind of stuff, I would just say be careful with that. Because a lot of times that onus gets put on the kid. So if I'm going to go to my head coach and say, hey, the coach says they're going to throw 60 feet this year, and the coach says she's going to throw 50 feet this year, that onus gets put on the kid when they get to school. That number is going to be held to them the entire time. So now that's on the college coach too. They've got to be responsible enough to not take the bait. They've got to use their own judgment. But as you're saying, this is what the kid's capable of, well, then you start to believe it, you know, and we want to believe, but if you believe it too much, then if that scholarship offer comes in a little bit lower than that, there just tends to be a little miscommunication and some misunderstanding. So just be objective. The biggest thing to your athlete is, at Arizona, I mean, Penn State and Washington, you could be the top 2% in the country, and they would give you a granola bar and a handshake academically, you know, to go to school. The Arizona schools, Arizona State, NAU, Arizona, if you had a 3.8 or above, that was $35,000 a year academic aid right off the bat. So if you have good grades, you could have $130,000 of aid in your pocket. All you have to do is maintain a 3.0 while you're in school. If you're a 3.5 student, you get $15,000 a year. Again, that's $60,000 just for the kid having decent grades. And that went all the way, you know. So, and it helps me as a coach too, but it also think about that. I mean, just for being a decent student, or, you know, not decent, but being above average student to a good student, you could save 6 figures off their college bill. Well, then maybe it's not such a flyer to go to that school. Now, as you get into NAIA and D3 schools, you know, the athletic aid's not there, but you can get need-based and you can get institutional aid. That's the same thing. If your grades are solid, you're fitting their demographic of what they're looking for academically, they could get probably a better scholarship with their grades than they could athletically. And make yourself available, you know, to the college coaches. I mean, obviously, I think we'll be an advocate for kids we believe in, but make yourself available to have those conversations. Say, yeah, love to talk to you about the kid. Give some details, talk about their background, you know, and give me a heads up if dad's a pain in the ass, or, you know, be careful with mom and dad. those are the nice heads up I get. But make yourself available, advocate for the kid, but again, don't overextend yourself. And just know the general timelines, like when things need to happen. I always tell people your sophomore year is when things are going to get rolling from a recruiting standpoint. As coaches, we can't do a whole lot until the end of the sophomore year, but registering with the clearinghouse, starting to do some research on some schools, reaching out to schools. They may not be able to reply, but that sophomore year is when things need to heat up a little bit. Junior year marks, I mean, if the kids are making a college decision the fall of their senior year, mostly, the junior year is all you have to go off of. So that's when you need to make sure that the grades are all up to snuff, you've reached out, you've started applying to schools, you know, and setting up your options. There's always that kid that the senior year at their state meet, they haven't picked a school and they just come out of nowhere and they throw far. There's always going to be opportunities for those kids, but by and large, that junior year is crunch time for paperwork, for registration, and it's also kind of the last chance, if they're looking for the big athletic scholarship, is to be able to put their mark out. Now, if a school's on the fence about a kid, they'll be open and say, hey, we want to talk, but I think we kind of want to wait, let your indoor season go, or let's wait till April and see how you're doing, that kind of thing. But those are, you know, start getting the clearinghouse registration done, start getting all the administrative stuff handled in that junior year. That's when you want to start letting the coaches know you're there. That's when you want to start presenting yourself a little bit more, because that at the end of the junior year, or during the junior year for that matter, coaches can come out and start doing home visits. They can start engaging in person, not just hitting the like button on an Instagram post, because that's all we're allowed to do to that point.
TJ, what percent of your kids did you sign in that November, December signing area?
I would say about 75%.
Right.
The rest were wait and sees, or the rest were, man, I really like that kid, but I need to see a little bit more before I let him know I was there or her, but I didn't really do it. But, again, that kind of depends on the level, right? There may be some schools that are fully hoping you come, but they're just waiting to see what your decision is. But the bulk of them, is that fall. And I think that the kids want to get that decision done as well. Some of them might, I always tell kids, if you want to, I'm offering you a walk-on spot right now. If you throw 2 feet farther in the shot, that's a different conversation if the money's available. And I just tell the kids, it's a question of whether you want to bet on yourself or not. Do you want to take that offer to this school? Or do you want to bet on yourself a little bit? And it's not to, poke them into it or try to lure them into it, but it's just saying, hey, this is where you're at. Do you want to take, and if you've done your due diligence, any school you pick, right, is going to be one you're going to be happy with from an educational standpoint, from a fit, but is it a financial thing? But the fall of junior year is a big one.
Could you talk about Lauren and how the timeline of Lauren worked out and sort of the academic piece that fell into place for you as a track coach?
Yeah, so Lauren Love is now a redshirt freshman at the University of Arizona, and who I love dearly, and I would probably take a bullet for. So I was aware of Lauren. She was in Gillette, Wyoming, and she'd thrown 40 feet and change her junior year. And in Wyoming with an indoor season, I think at the state meet she went 45?
43 high.
43.8, yeah. So decent, right? But still and I love northern state, small town kids. I just feel like I relate with them better. I like that mentality. So I'm also partial to Wyoming kids for, with Ross and Sarah being there. But had an eye on her, but just didn't engage. It might have been an email or something. So she goes, early in the season, I think she went 40 outdoors, she went like 45 something. And Ross and Sarah had contacted me, but the week before, I think Lauren's high school coach had reached out and emailed me a little bit. And this is in the spring of her senior year.
This is the middle of March.
Yeah.
End of March.
And I'm like, oh, okay. And she's like, oh, I got this girl. Yeah. So of course, again, right, I immediately go to people who I know and trust. Hey, what do you think of this girl? Oh my gosh, she's this, she's this, she's this. Salt of the earth, great kid. We see her at meets. She's been to our camp. Love her. So okay. So then I reach out to Lauren. Within a week, I've got a Zoom call with mom and dad at their kitchen table. Lauren's there because I don't have the time I'm in the middle of season and I don't have time to get out to Gillette to sit down with the family. Luckily, I've got some street cred with Ross and Sarah. But so, she reaches out to Sarah, asks some advice. So she goes, hey, there's 2 schools that have kind of shown interest. Well, one of which is Oregon State, which David Dumble's the coach. That was Sarah's college coach. And the other was the University of Arizona. And so we start having this conversation. Well, 2 weeks?
Maybe.
Yeah, so Lauren, bless her heart, is a 3.95 student. So we run the numbers. She qualifies for $35,000 a year for 4 years academic aid. So for me to cover the full, I've got to offer her 35 or 40%. So now that's realistic, right? At her 45-foot distance, I'm on the fence about it if we can go that far. Well, we do. I say, hey, there's something, this is my gut instinct. Sometimes it backfires, but I just hey, there's enough people that I value their opinion and I trust that are telling me this is a kid that's going to do well. So we sign her. The next week, she goes 47.6. I get a text from the meet with video. It was at your place, wasn't it? Yeah, it was at Buffalo.
It's a great place to throw one.
But that was a kid that she could have gone to Wyoming, any school in that area, in the Rockies or in the Pacific Northwest or the Midwest, schools would have taken her in a heartbeat. And she just didn't want to do that. And jokingly afterwards, she's like, well, my brother lives in Phoenix and I want to go somewhere warm. Well, okay, great. But we hit it off, and she and I think we'd interacted a little bit at the camp her sophomore year, but nothing, oh wow, that's the kid I gotta watch. But the fact that I had a relationship built with people she respected and trusted, and I communicated directly with her. I talked with her mom and dad, and she went on and through, she was a glider, she went on and threw 51 feet last year as a true freshman rotating, and it was inconsistent, but she put out some good marks, and she busted her tail. And we all have those kids, but in that 9 or 10 months of me coaching Lauren, I think her and I, got to have a closer bond than some kids that I coached for 5 years. And it was just special for me because of where she came from and the connection with Ross and Sarah, but also just her and I are, have the same terrible, sarcastic sense of humor. We have, similar thoughts on things, but we just had opportunities to get to know each other really well, making some road trips to, U.S. Junior Championships, and we both went out and worked Ross and Sarah's camp afterwards. But that's a kid right there that was a late bloomer. She had opportunities. She had Division I opportunities offered to her throughout the year. She just didn't feel those were good fits for her.
And then the academic piece really
Oh,
put her
that's
over the top.
Yeah.
That late in the game, especially in April.
I probably would have, if it wasn't for the academic piece when we signed Lauren, I probably would not have had a chance with her financially. I wouldn't have. There's no way that, I think we were $52,000 a year all told out of state every year. I wouldn't have had a chance, even if I offered that 30%. Oregon State, or maybe at the bitter end, a school that she wasn't necessarily hot about, but financially it worked out, she would have gone to. But the stars kind of aligned in a lot of ways where I'm asking her GPA and I'm like, please be good, please be good, please be good. Oh yeah, like a 3.95. Boom, done. Like I can offer you what I was gonna offer you in the first place, and you're not gonna have to pay to go to school. Now her 5th year, and that was something I discussed with her. Your 5th year, that academic aid leaves, and you're gonna have, but hopefully either the savings that you've incurred over the 4 years, or you throw far enough to earn an increase in scholarship, is gonna allow that. But so there's a story of somebody that was last second, right? I mean, March, her senior year, and she is an old soul. She was cool as a cucumber about it. She had no stresses in the world because she knew she was gonna go somewhere. But there's always that one kid, for me, there's always that one kid that I just wanna wait, and I hope nobody sweeps them up, and just see what happens.
On the other side, I think the timeline of the 75% of your kids that sign in November is really fast for most parents and coaches.
It comes quick.
It comes really quick. So you really got to have your stuff put together, know where you want to visit, know what you want to do in like September of that junior year, which seems really early, but in track and field, we don't get to throw our senior season and then get recruited.
Well, the first thing I tell parents, I assume all parents or coaches have never had any experience with, whether they're the firstborn kid or they've had 5 Division I All-Americans ahead of them. I say the first thing you need to do is know what your gotta-haves are and what your wants are. You gotta write them down. Because then as all these schools start contacting you and you're overwhelmed with all these coaches saying you're the greatest thing ever, or they want you to come, it gets really blurry. But if a school calls and you love the coach and you love the school, but they don't have engineering and you want to be an engineer, well, it's an easy no. Hey coach, I really appreciate the call, but it just narrows it down. But know what your gotta-haves are. If it's the size of school, if it's the cost, if it's the programs, if it's the area, whatever. Know what your non-negotiables are. And some kids can't tell you that, and that's okay. But just have it down, and then have the, boy, it would be nice if it was this. Then it's just easy to weed through that, but it also helps the kids decide, like, where are you looking? I have no idea. If they're a walk-on kid, or if they're an under-the-radar kid, if they know what they want, put it on them to get on their phone and start searching, collegiate engineering programs in the upper Midwest, or collegiate engineering programs in South Florida because they want to go live in Florida, and just start identifying where those schools are. Then you come backtrack that, go on to TFERS, or go on, start doing your research and go from there. But just, a lot of this has to be on the student athlete because it's their decision at the end of the day. Of course, if you have the relationship with the kids you think you want to have, they're going to ask you, and at some point there's going to be a decision around the dinner table of what's going on, because at some component, mom and dad may be fitting some of the bill, and it's going to have to come into play. But just being prepared early, that sophomore year, get all the logistic stuff out of the way where it can come down to decisions. And hopefully once they go on their visits, they've got it narrowed down enough with every school they're visiting has everything they're looking for. Then it's that really difficult gut feeling or really easy gut feeling decision when they get back to the house. I encourage parents to be involved because they are going to be, decision makers. But I also empower the kid to know that if they've got the green light from mom and dad, that you're the person I'm going to be dealing with for the next 4 to 5 years, through good, bad, and everything else. You've got to make sure that this is where you want to go. I think some parents project that decision onto them because that's where they went, or because it's a perception thing, or they think it's best. But putting that on the student athlete. I think. Yeah. But yeah, those are just kind of my things there. Go ahead.
So, maybe this is not answerable, but
I can answer everything now, I'm not a college coach anymore.
Yeah. How do you assess the coaches? So I had a kid go to a school I won't name. It was an absolute disaster. The coach started drinking with the kid after practice.
That's, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, rumor has it. And then there was, not from the coach, but from alumni that trained, pushed for steroids. The kid was really talented. And then I told you about my niece. I mean, some of the athletes, we've sent a lot of kids on to schools, and they talk about recruiting coach and practice coach, that they're two different people.
Yep.
Is there any way to tell?
Absolutely. So if the student athlete, and I'll defer to Sarah when I'm done here, because she's been through this. I was not. I was like, hey, can I come on your team? Two ways I would suggest that. Talk to the current student athletes. If your athlete goes on a visit after 9 p.m. is probably the most telling thing you're going to find about a program, because the coach isn't there. The kids will be brutally honest, or they will read body language when you ask a question. Ask the current students. I have gotten kids that have transferred to me because they went to another university, but because I treated them the same after they told me no. And the other coaches were like, up here is you're not coming. But in that same token, is that coach the same person when you're not trying to be enticed to come there? And I always prided myself on full disclosure. Here's all the cell numbers of everything in the recruiting process before they even came on campus. I would get the permission of my athletes, and I would send that person a contact list. I said, this is every one of my current student athletes. Please reach out, please ask hard questions. And I think that in itself was good. But if you have other coaches that have sent kids to that school, or you've got alums, or you know somebody that threw there, or a little brother of somebody that threw there, I think it's fair to ask those questions. Maybe not point, hey, does this guy drink with his athletes? Because that's but if there's rumors of that, I think it's fair to ask those questions. But I think the student athletes are the biggest. I've lost recruits because of the way some of my student athletes behaved after 9 o'clock. Not the way I wanted them to behave, but some of them, I've threatened them within an inch of their life. If they drank or they went to parties, well, the host wouldn't do it. But a couple of kids would come back to the house after they had a few and start talking, and kid wouldn't say anything on the visit, parents wouldn't say anything. But after the fact, I heard through the grapevine that a couple kids were being knuckleheads. So, it's very telling. The current kids on the team are going to tell you everything you need to know about who the coach is, what the culture's like, what a day-to-day schedule looks like, and alums. And I don't mean like prideful alums. I mean just talking with kids that just had a normal experience, that aren't necessarily going to fall on a sword for their coach.
Have you lost a recruit because your present student athlete said, no, this kid doesn't fit us?
Yes, I have walked away from, in the last 2 years, I had and one of which I was wrong on. She is kicking butt and taking names for one of my close friends in this area. She is amazing, but they had the same read on her on the visit as well. Like all the kids came back and they're like, no, don't care how far she throws, no way. And my friend took the risk, and she's turned out to be a wonderful kid. I just didn't want to take that risk. I've also had a #1 male shot putter in the country. I didn't even get him barely to his hotel before I wanted to turn around and drop him at the airport. Myself and my athletes are extremely protective of our culture. And I've lost kids, and I've been described as too nice by coaches that I've recruited against, but I don't want to be anybody else but me. I wanted to build kids I've had success with were built on my relationship with them, not how good of a coach. I'm sure there's some of the technical that has to do that, but we got each other, we understood each other, there was trust, there was communication. Those are the kids I've had the most success with. Not the most talented necessarily, not the ones that I coached technically the best, but there was a trust and there was a belief and a communication. And so through the recruiting process, I'm not coming in with all my stats and my resume. I'm going to mention a few names if I have to, but it's more looking them in the eye on their couch in their living room and saying, this is who I am, this is how we're going to take care of your son or daughter, this is how we're going to operate. But yes, I think it's talking to the current student athletes, it's talking to alums, it's talking to coaches that have sent kids to that school, and just asking, I'm a very big proponent of where there's smoke, there's fire. And if there's a lot of smoke, there's probably fire. I think that's valid and fair to ask those questions.
Do you have like a general rule of thumb of like as an NCAA coach, when you can or can't talk to athletes at the high school level, how you can reach out to them? We've had kids where they've been in contact with their coach and then it just stops.
Yeah, so you're not allowed to have anything other than written correspondence until after their sophomore year, and then you can start phone calls, and then during their junior year, you can have in person. But some coaches don't play that way, or some coaches, like your athlete might be mislisted as a junior on a website, and they're really a sophomore, that kind of stuff. But there's ways around it. I can talk to the coach whenever I want. I can call you whenever, if they're 12.
And if I show up on your campus with my family on vacation over spring break, and I happen to walk by the track and I interact with you because I'm there, that's not the same as
No, so you can.
coming to a track meet that I'm
Yes,
competing at the high school.
on campus, you're good to go unless it's a dead period or a quiet period. You can show up on your own cost and walk into my office and say, hey, coach, and I've had that happen. We're like, holy crap, what are you doing on my campus? I've been waiting for another 30 days before I can call you. Oh, we're just on vacation. We thought we'd hit up ASU and U of A while we're down in Scottsdale. Holy cow. It was the same with Jordan Geis. Like family decided they were going to go take a vacation to Arizona, so they hung out in Phoenix and they came down to U of A and great. And that was just them vetting everything before they wanted to go on official visits. But yeah, they can show up anytime unless it's a quiet period. Now there may be some times where if I'm at a track meet and I know there's a sophomore there, I'm allowed to have a hello. I can't have a recruiting discussion, call it mom. I'm gonna find my way over to that team camp and just make sure I'm seen and say, hey, how you doing? Good luck. And then keep walking and then maybe go talk to the coach around the corner. Especially if there's like a really high level recruit, you're gonna see like sharks circling, waiting to have that, oh, hey, how's it going? Yeah,
Oh, weird, you were just in the bathroom, I've been waiting out here.
But yeah, you can, at their own free will, they can go whenever they want to check things out. And then there might be a quiet period and dead period. If you go knock on the coach's office and say, hey, love that you're here. Unfortunately, we got to end the conversation here. This is why. But you can give me a call when you're outside the arena and we can talk. But usually I'd say like that junior year is when you're going to start seeing the coaches really start to look. The better the kid, the earlier you're going to have communication with. At least from mine, but like some of the smaller schools, like when I was at Nevada, I had to get the kids that were up and comers or diamonds in the rough before they popped off the big throw. I had to net them early, or I had to offer more money than the big schools were offering, because I would see a kid and be like, oh man, this kid's about ready to go nuts. You see him at a meet when they're shoveling snow out of their ring, and you see something special, like I gotta get this kid now before the big state school sees him and I'm kicked to the curb. But and I will say this, I always take value. I don't see it as a negative. If a kid's from a small school, has limited resources, maybe has a coach that's the football coach that's out there just to make sure nobody gets hit in the head, I see that as a positive. I had a young lady, she's from Ennis, Montana, and she was an Ironman camper, and if she hadn't been an Ironman camper, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but she was 6'2" and could move like a cat. And her sophomore year, she threw 43 and 140. And she's telling me about, oh yeah, we had to shovel out the circles at our state meet, and what's your circle like? Well, it was covered in snow, so we had to, like, okay, you're from a really small town in Montana. Like, I see that as an upside. Of course I want a kid from a big school that's got good coaching, has a great foundation, but if they're like, well, I've got a personal trainer, and I've got a massage therapist, and I've got this, and I've got this, well, what's gonna change when you get to college? Like, where's that upside? Like, I wanna see, like, with the exception of people like Jordan, like, when they get to college, they're gonna do this. I wanna see that there's gonna be an upside. I want a kid that understands hard work, appreciates what they have. So that's why I like those small town, blue collar, cold weather kids, regardless if I was in Seattle or State College or Tucson. That's the kind of kid I want. Some kids want city kids, some kids want foreign athletes, or coaches want foreign athletes. That was my thing. That was what I wanted. The smaller the town, the more excited I was.
What do you think of summer camps?
Oh, I'm a big fan now. No,
but I mean, I had a kid, football player, got COVID, so he didn't really end up getting a senior year throwing. He would have been good. But he did not go to a certain Minnesota football camp, and
see, the track doesn't work that way.
okay.
The camps for track are for the kids. The camps for basketball and football are for the coaches, especially when they're the ID camps or they're the blue chip elite camp. Soccer especially, like if you're not playing for the right club team at the right tournament, you're not gonna be seen anymore. Or volleyball. Track's for the kids. Track's to go to 307 or Ironwood or go to Larry's camp. It's for them. It's for the kids to go to be around other throwers, get some fun, get some good coaching, get a great experience, and just get better, but also find a better love for throwing. I went to Ironwood, one, because I could get a paid trip to my home state. Two, I could spend a week with my friends and recharge my battery. But three, I got to spend a week with 300 throwers from 43 states in the U.S. And of those 300 throwers, there were probably at times 8 to 10 that I was actively going to recruit or already was recruiting. I love that as a coach. But also in the hindsight, we've had so much reach with Ironwood, with campers and coaches. I tell the kids, I said, tell me you're an Ironwood camper. Well, why? Well, two things. It's gonna show you care. It's gonna show that you took a week out of your time and your parents gave up some money for you to go be a better thrower. But two, odds are there's been an alum that's come through that program or a coach that's interacted with that program that's gonna know what that's about. Or 307, or if there's like with your club here. Oh yeah, there's been a lot of kids, you know, it creates a tighter network. And it gives an association, but it also shows that kid wants to be better, you know, and within that though, leading towards more of a club side, clubs have reputations. Clubs have reputations for being really high maintenance pains in the ass. And clubs also have reputations for being, man, great guys, they're all about the kids, they want them to go on and you know, you want to continue to support your athletes when they go to college, but you also, I'm looking for the club coaches that can say, no, you made your choice, we trained you right, we raised you right, you're on your own, kid. We'll always be here for you if you need us, but it's not the weekly phone calls, it's not the, well, man, she looks like she's a little bit laid off her left, or, you know, like, no, that ship is now sailing, you chose me. And if you trust me for who I am, and you trust me to take care of your athlete, you gotta stay out of the way, and you gotta tell them you love them, tell them you're proud of them, and tell them to work hard and trust the coach. And if you're that club coach that can't separate, it's about you. I have turned kids away that I absolutely love because of what club they were a part of, because I was not willing to take on the headache or hearing behind my back that so-and-so said, well, she should be throwing 10 feet farther by now. And just, you know, they're you know, like the same at Ironwood. I am dead set and intent that when those kids choose those universities, I'm gonna give them a big hug, I'm gonna tell them I love them, and I'm gonna wish them the best of luck, and we'll always be here if you need to come home for break. But this is where you decided to go. And we told you this is a good place to go. And if you struggle, you've got to look your coach in the eye, and you've got to communicate with your coach and explain to them that you're struggling. You've got to build that relationship with your coach. You don't come crawling back to us asking for us to fix it as much as we'd like to. We've got to put that same trust and that same respect in the coach. And ultimately, if that doesn't work, you've got to find another place to go. But my whole intent is to grow the kids and teach them the right way and teach them how to communicate and how to trust and fix their own problems, let them become adults and not, you know, that's the good and bad thing about being a great club coach is you do such a good job of getting belief and trust and development that why wouldn't the kid look like this is the only way? This is the only way I've ever known, and I've gotten so good and I love these guys so much and I have so much fun. It's teaching them that, okay, now's the next step. Now's when you build, this is your new club, this is your new family. It's not, you can't keep looking over the fence and say, well, you know, with Aaron, I was doing this, or with Kevin, I was doing this. Like, well, you were, and this is, you're right. But now you're going to take that, what we taught you, and you're going to add to it and just build that trust with the coach. The camps are awesome, and I don't mean that tongue in cheek because I'm associated with Ironwood. I think it's a great experience. It gets newbies fired up to be a thrower. It gets veteran kids to be more excited about throwing. It grows their family. They go to track meets and they see somebody with a camp logo shirt on. They have a bigger cheering section. They have supporters. They have peer pressure by other people out. You know, what are you doing? Oh, I went through yesterday. Oh man, I gotta go throw. You know, I think it just builds a tighter net. And as we all know, throws coaches, like it's a small world, and it's huge. I think it just opens a lot of doors and it creates a lot of relationships. You know, with the camps.
There's lots of people that I was campers with when I went to Ironwood in high school. Then we made junior teams together our freshman year of college, and then we're at NCAA's together, and then we're in world championship teams together, and now now we're all having families and coaching together, and so
Oh, yeah.
connections that we make as freshman and sophomore in high school with somebody across the country because of camp.
Yeah, Sarah,
Not
Jill,
just in
Casey
your
Malone, Ian Waltz,
place.
Joe Kovacs, Ryan Whiting. You know, these are all young campers at Ironwood that have come back as college counselors, or come back as coaches, or come back as guest speakers. I mean, Olympians, world championship medalists, 9 gajillion time All-Americans. Right? And they were all just, and they're, you know, it's track. Some are just gonna be better than others no matter what. You can have them do the exact same thing and they're gonna be better, but they were all there together, you know, and they built friendships that they're still, you know, I just think that shows a lot about what a kid's willing to do, but it also shows who they are as a person. Like, if you're an Ironwood kid or you're a 307 kid, I know what you're about. I know how you've been taught. I know what you are, how you fit in. I know what, you know, what's on your inside about, you know, how you've grown up and what your values are. I mean, that says a lot to me, and then it makes it easier for me to commit. Or know if, like, you guys have been around some amazing throwers in this area and helped them develop or helped mentor them or just been a part of some small part of their process in any way. That makes it easier if I see, oh wow, they're throwing, you know, they're with the club, and then I call you guys. Oh yeah, they're, you know, about once a month, or it could be 3 times a week or whatever, but at least it says something about who that kid is. And it says something where they've come from and who they've interacted with. And it's almost like a letter of recommendation without having to ask for it. You know what the kid's about based on where they've come from.
An added benefit of the summertime camps, and this is from personal experience, because I went out to Ironwood and I just hung out and I listened to all these fantastic coaches, and that's where I got my start. Because back in the olden days when they were just VHS tapes, I had worn a couple of those out, but I didn't really know what I was looking for because they never worked with kids on that tape. But if you come to a camp as a coach that's just learning, you can just hang out and just listen to these people talk about throwing and about kids and, you know, movements and postures and all of that. It's fantastic.
And it works for the kids too.
Well, that's right.
But that works for the kids too, right? They go and they might be at a circle with, they may be from the Twin Cities, and they might be at a circle with a kid from Wyoming, a kid from Southern California, and a kid from Canada. With different backgrounds and different coaching, but next thing you know, wait, what do you do? What drill do you do? Oh, I work on this, or I work on this. It just compounds the learning. It's not just a fun 4 days, but you know, that's, as a coach, like I've always flown to camps, whether it's been Sarah and Ross's camp or Ironman. The second I get done with USA's or the second I get done with NCAA's, I'm fried. My energy levels, my passion, my emotional energy is in the gutter. But I get on that plane and I fly out there and I work 6 hours a day in the sun and I stay up way too late after hours with all the coaches swapping stories.
That's the other 50% of the fun.
But the second I leave that camp, I feel like I'm ready to go back and get out on the recruiting trail and do it all over again. But I'm also excited about seeing a drill that Sarah did or seeing a drill that Aaron did. I'm like, I'm going to use that with this kid. And the kids get it too. The kids get that too, and I think that's huge.
Any other questions for TJ?
And again, as always, like if there's any, and this is something I've offered out, and it's not a, hey, let me see what I can do. If you've got questions about college coaches, if you've got questions about anything related, I am a very social person. I wouldn't say I'm close friends with a lot of coaches, but I have a lot of colleagues, and I do have a lot of close friends at the collegiate level, as does Sarah. But like, hey, what do you think about this guy? What do you think about this program? Stuff like that, I'd be happy to say anything to help or guide or answer any questions. That's where I think my value at Ironwood is, as these college coaches start calling. I'm not somebody that's, oh yeah. It's like, there's a direct, you know, effect there. So I'm gonna try to take advantage of that as much as I can. But like I say, I have no skin in the game anymore. I'm not gonna say bad things about a program or about a coach, but I'll answer questions honestly in my mind and hopefully help where I can with that.
All right, I want to have a huge thank you for Sarah and TJ and Jill who left yesterday. These guys absolutely hit it out of the park this weekend. So thank you guys for coming. It's been
Thank you for having us. This is fun.
Thank you.
I do feel a little self-conscious though. The more I've spoke, the smaller the crowd has gotten.
Yeah.
So like yesterday, full, relatively full. This morning,
It's the natural consequence. Of
nobody slept through this one, so we're okay.
So we got one more session left, started at 2:30, about half an hour from right now with Paul and I. Hope you come back for that, and we'll see you in a couple minutes.
You gotta go.
I gotta go. Have an hour.
Uber, aren't you excited?
My first
I'm
Uber.
excited.
My first Uber.
Very excited.
I'm uber excited.
Oh,